This is Fam Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Keri Nola. And welcome to the Fam Electric Ghost podcast. How you doing tonight?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing really well. Yeah,
Oh,
looking forward to our chat.
it's always fun to talk to new people on the show. Your first time on the show today.
Yes.
And one of the things we ask every guest before we get to the heart of your story is a couple questions we ask everybody. What motivates you, and why do you do what you do?
Mm. I'm motivated by listening to what I'd call God, Spirit, the divine, and asking how I can be used. And I'm inspired to follow that thread through everything because I find that I can be of greatest service when I do that. And I also find that I am the most fulfilled beyond those instant moments of gratification, but like long-term fulfillment when I'm doing what I'm aligned to do. And I feel like spirit knows that way better than I do. So I'm motivated to listen to spirit and do what I'm told.
That's interesting because a lot of times in music, I've always been a creative person that believes in like the muse. And
Yes.
a
Yes.
lot of artists, we kind of clue into this thing. It's like we channel. Like
Yes.
we put our 10,000 hours to know our instrument, whether it's our voice or whatever it is.
Yep.
But a lot of times it's like if you're in that present kind of flow state, things are coming from the universe, and some of it, a
Yep.
lot of it's probably subconscious, but a lot of it's
Absolutely.
actually like external and internal. And what we can do as creatives is we synthesize that.
Yep.
We kind of take the internal and the external and find a way to make something new with our
Yes.
spin on it. And I think that's interesting when people are able to like get into the ideas like a clearing abundance blocks and opening up what's meant to be. Because a lot of things are blocks,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of like people get into a creative block, people
Yes.
get into like a writer's block, people get into okay, procrastination kind of block. So how do you get beyond that? And it seems like that's your wheelhouse, right?
Absolutely. I think what we call blocks a lot of the time are really just us not having the skill cultivated to be able to do exactly what you just talked about. How do we tune into the channel of what we are wanting to flow with? So if I'm wanting to tune into the channel of abundance, how do I do that? Well, one, I need to know what direction I'm moving in. I want to be online with abundance. I want to be online with clarity. I want to be online with health or whatever it might be that we're trying to open to. And one of the things I've discovered is that relaxation is the most powerful pose for receiving anything, whether
Mhm.
that be a creative download or money or a relationship or a shift in our health or some aspect of what we're experiencing in life. And I don't think we do a good job of relaxing in this culture. We're always go, go, go,
Yeah,
hustle, get it done. And that is not a very available position. If you think of that, I like to think of it like, are your hands open or closed? And when you're in go mode, running all the time, how open are
yeah,
you? Like,
yeah. A lot of times we're in like a fight or flight. It seems
yes,
like a lot of times we're going towards safety and we're both so rushed. And I've always
exactly.
been, very much into like Victorian looking glass self. Like the Victorian
Yes.
poets had this idea of the looking glass self.
Mm,
And
mhm.
a lot of times people get into this like the idea in music and jazz fusion, there's this idea of like there's no bad note, there's an opportunity.
Mm.
So there's a lot of pressure when you're a musician to try for perfection. But
Yes.
when you get into like improvisational jazz or fusion or modal jazz, these musicians that are at the level of any classical trained musician, they're at the top. They understand their instrument like anybody,
Yes.
but they're willing to go beyond
Mm.
like what's on the page. Like they're willing to actually change or evolve the piece
Yeah.
based on the feeling at the moment or
Mm.
that is a hard thing. I've dealt with the classical musicians that we try to put them into that kind of modal jazz, and they're looking for somebody to tell them what to do.
Yep.
And we're like, you just got to feel it. It's like you don't feel it.
Right. And that's, I think, the
You
difference between an amateur and somebody further along on the path sometimes is I think of like kindergarten, we're taught color inside the lines and 1 + 1 = 2. But then as you graduate and move along the path, you start to discover, oh, it gets kind of fun to color outside the lines and we can create something new and different. But in order to do that, perhaps we have to start somewhere, and that's usually with those boundaries and structure and those
Yeah, you have
guidelines.
to learn
But
the rules before you can break them. Like,
yes.
you have to, like, you're in the canon of
Yeah.
learning, like, your scales and learning all the music theory, and you
Yeah.
learn, you learn classical music, you learn, like, stuff that's in the canon. But
Hmm.
then once you get control of your instrument and you understand it, you understand everything about it,
Yes.
then you can break it. That's the same thing with scientists. Scientists will
Mm.
go understand there's a theory
Yeah.
and then challenge that theory until the point where they actually break it. Like, I'm in software engineering. We always
Hmm.
challenge, like, the core fundamentals
Yeah.
so that we can actually go and change the foundation.
I
So
love
you
that.
see in IT, like, we're continually evolving at exponential rates
Yeah.
because we challenge the canon. It's like
Mm.
what was the canon in the '70s is not the canon now. Like,
Yeah.
we keep on changing it
Thank
all the
goodness.
time. And
Yes.
it just that the floor keeps on shifting. It's not the same floor.
Yes. Always growing and evolving. We're evolutionary creatures, so by nature, we're designed to do that, and I think that's why it is so vulnerable when we feel blocked or resistant, because we have a craving and a desire to evolve, to move forward, and when we feel stuck from doing that, we wanna understand what's going on and what we can do instead.
But sometimes people have a lot of comfort in the norm, in the kinda in the social moray is like, I wanna stay within the expected behavior.
Yep.
But,
No.
a lot of times we learn about, like, the bell curve and, like, what's on the outer edges of the bell curve.
Yep.
A lot of times the creativity or taking risk or getting to where you need to go, there's some level of discomfort.
Absolutely. Nothing
And
magical ever happens inside the comfort zone is what I like to say.
yeah, and the fear and the safety can prevent you from evolving.
Mhm.
So
Very
it's like
much.
there's a point where you have to have a certain level of, like, not phoning it in
Yep.
and maybe treading water but not drowning, but,
Yes.
like, knowing that what you don't know
Yep.
and being a pioneer to go toward that and not have the fear of failing because, a lot of times in IT, we're always talking about failing upward. That
Mhm.
that's kind of the way we go.
For sure, and I had a mentor once, and I really loved, what he said. It was like, "You wanna move to the point of being stretched without breaking," and I think that's what you're speaking to here, is we don't wanna collapse into the fear, and if we push ourselves too far to that edge and we're terrified, then often we get paralyzed and we get, like, pulled back into our shell for safety, but we wanna push far enough that we're stretched into, like, okay, I might be a little shaky, but I can try this. And oh, look what I found in that spot when I was willing to stretch in that way.
And the mindset of abundance, because I think a lot of times people will talk themselves out of abundance. People,
Yes.
like, you get into the mindset of musicians, it's like the starving artist type of musician.
Oh yeah.
They will say, like, well, I'm like, if I make it, I sold out.
Yes.
So then the idea of abundance is like antithetical to the idea of creativity, but that's not necessarily true because look at Prince and Miles Davis. They were successful and they were experimental and they weren't starving artists. Right? You don't
Absolutely.
you don't have to be a starving artist to push the envelope.
You don't, and a lot of the times, when your own needs aren't being met, it affects your creativity because you're living in feast or famine, you're living in a nervous system that is compressed and frightened, and that doesn't really lend itself to being infinitely creative and really being able to touch the edge of your potential and what you came here to create. So that story really doesn't do anyone any favors. You having more helps you to be able to produce more, create more, and give more. And I just saw a meme yesterday and I really loved it. It said, ask for more. The universe isn't on a budget. I thought that
Yeah.
was so fantastic. It's like there's enough to go around. And that's how I define abundance too. It's how we relate to the enoughness of life. This story of scarcity and not enoughness. And of course, many of us have experienced times when we were under resourced or we didn't have as much as we wanted. And we can find the abundance in the breath of every moment. And we can give ourselves permission to not just have more, but have more of what is meant for you to have. And I think each of us come here with a soul mission to have some very particular experiences in this human realm, and we want to open to what those are.
I think also like self-examination, like the looking
Yeah.
glass self, like in terms of healing, sometimes people don't want to look at
Mm-mm.
the things that hurt. right? But a
Yes.
lot of times, you know, in the wheelhouse of being an artist, we kind of take
Mhm.
a lot of their emotional baggage or the things that happened, and we it's a cathartic process to kind of
Yeah.
go into it and pull something out of it, and the art becomes the positive result of actually, you know, taking on the challenge of looking at that feeling, like looking at
Yes.
that sadness or looking at that melancholy or looking at like anger, like in terms of like punk and grunge
Mhm.
music is like, and learning how to channel it into something positive rather than like hitting somebody. You make a song
Yes. It
that
helps you
has
alchemize that energy,
alchemize
transmute
that
it.
energy, you get like a Eddie Vedder. You get like, you know,
Yes.
we get you get like, you know, like the Sex Pistols or the, you know,
Yeah.
Joe Strummer from the Clash. Like they were able to take angst and turn it into art.
Yes.
And so there's a way to synthesize things and then kind of, you know, read that moment and broadcast it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. What you're talking to me about is shadow work. That's a big aspect of what I do is going into the dark and illuminating what's there. And oftentimes we think that only the scary stuff lives in those places, but also we have hidden aspects of our gifts, like our small self that dreamed of being anything and anyone until we may have gotten crushed by people who didn't believe in our dreams or told us, like that's not going to pay the bills, and we begin believing these things. But when we're willing to go into those dark places and find those things, there's treasure there, and we can use that to then create what we're here to create.
Yeah, because a lot of times you get the comparison trap,
Yes.
or you get a lot of times in art, people, I always try to find as a producer when I talk to another musician, is like they'll come to me and to show me they can do something that's like popular, that
Yeah.
they can clone Taylor
Hmm.
Swift or they can clone Beyonce or they can clone this. And I'm like, it's nice that you can do that, but they already exist.
Right.
Right. So I want to know about the song you're scared to show me,
Yes. Oof, I got the
because that
chills.
to me is going to show me who you are. And really, the whole thing in art is like if you can take what's inside you
Mhm.
and make it the best version, if I can help you make that better, if I can
Yes.
use my production techniques to make that the best version of you,
Yep.
and it's not like anybody else, and that's your secret sauce. That's what
100%.
nobody else has, and that's what your ticket is. And the people
Yeah.
who did that, like the Dylans, the
Hmm.
Hendrixes, Jim Morrison's, like Jazz Joplin's, if you go back in the past, there's people that had that secret thing that was different,
Yes.
and they leaned into it.
Yeah, and it was authentic and real, and it's not a repeat or a cookie cutter like copy. Whenever I'm working with entrepreneurs or creatives, and they're trying to bring something through, there's something alive in them. They're birthing a new product or service or creation. I always tell them stop looking at what other people are doing because it's going to be too much of a slippery slope because you want to get it right and you want to be liked, and you're going to look to all the things that have already been accepted and try to rinse and repeat, and then we're going to miss the magic and the beauty of what is inside of you trying to come out. So I tell them turn off your Facebook, your Instagram, your TikTok, like get rid of all of it until this creation is birthed, and then you can get back on there. But I don't want you looking at anything because those parts of us are tricky, and they try to be like, oh, do it like that, and it's like, is that your way to do it, or is that just what you think will be the safe path because it's already been approved of and you think you can
Yeah,
belong.
that's the problem with like a lot of social media today with the young people. Yeah, the
Yes.
thing is like, is it the number of views? Is it the number of likes? Is it the image you see from some influencer
Yep.
that's telling you that's the way to be?
Mhm.
I even saw my daughter showing somebody was talking about like people's I don't know, appearance, and it was basically judging appearance and saying like giving like an eye to like these young people, telling them what was like the acceptable appearance.
Mm.
I thought it was very destructive
Yes.
to limit what people's expression in terms of what is acceptable is like, well, this is your idea of what's acceptable.
Mhm. Who
And
defines
just because,
that?
yeah, if
Who
you have
gets
a
to
million,
decide?
yeah, if you have a million views, is that suddenly all the young people under 15 are thinking that's what I should be?
Yeah.
That is very destructive to because if you're outside of that, then what? You're not in the in crowd.
Right. Yep. Yeah.
So this terms of like healing, and one of the things I was looking at, like you like to be known as like a shadow mama and a holder of healers, and your superpowers like in that kind of alchemizing
Mhm.
those things. and the idea of like distorted consciousness. So
Yeah.
maybe you can talk about like how do you kind of take people out of that distorted consciousness?
Well, one, they got to know that they're in it. So we have to find those stories and aspects of life that they're thinking one way about. And usually there's some truth in what we believe. But I say, is it the truth with the capital T? Have we gotten to the heart of the matter, or are we kind of dangling around it? A lot of things, if you ask people why they believe something, I do a lot of work around money and, financial abundance. And so people have heard things like, money doesn't grow on trees. And I'm like, well, actually it does, because it's made out of paper. It's also pretend, like we made it up, right? So it's really
Mm.
just this exchange of energy. So we take something like that and we find, what are the beliefs that have you creating something different than what you actually are capable of creating and meant to be having. And people are mind blown. I have a money date journal. It's a freebie on my website, and I love hearing people's journey of moving through this. And I invite them to date money every day by answering these questions like, money, I'm happy when we do this together, or money, I feel angry when, or money, I'm sad when. And there are these links I discovered between how we feel toward money and how we feel toward our original providers, typically mom and dad or grandparents, whoever raised us. And if we had any unmet needs, or we couldn't count on our providers for being there in the ways that we needed, emotionally, physically, financially, spiritually, mentally, then we have projected that on money as an aspect of provision now. And we got to clean that up. So, first step is identifying it. And then, there's lots of ways that we can clean that up, doing shadow work. Sometimes acknowledgement is enough. It's like, oh, I didn't even realize I was thinking that. And we create a new construct, and they begin to imprint and root that in themselves. And that's enough. Other times we need to look for the trauma that led to that, and we need to do some trauma alchemizing. I do a lot of energy clearing and shielding work at a more spiritual level. So, I don't believe in one size fits all healing. I think we're all unique. And it just depends on what got them to this moment. And then like earlier, I said, I listen for the healing path that is required. And I've got a lot of tools to choose from, being in this field for over 20 years. I was formerly a psychotherapist, and retired my license, but you can't take the therapist out of the woman once it's in there. I kind of look through that lens at most things.
I think it's interesting. A lot of times, people are kind of programmed
Very
based
much.
on like the early childhood, and if they were in a situation where they were like they're wanting, like they're in poverty, like if their
Yes.
parents or their grandparents have kind of been stuck in a cycle,
Yep.
it's kind of what they expect. Because like if you're stuck in that subculture, like if you're stuck in the inner city or stuck in Appalachia,
Yep.
if you're stuck in some, you know, Soweto, like
Yep.
until you can find that you could get out of it, you're going to tend to kind of reflect the macrocosm around you.
Yep.
And until you can kind of step out of it and see that you actually could break a cycle,
Mhm.
then you can kind of get, sociologically, you can get trapped in that cycle.
Very much. And that's not only like their own experience, but I see a lot of people very confused as to why they are the way that they are, maybe around finances or love or health. And oftentimes we look back into the ancestry, and even if they didn't consciously know that their family didn't have that much, or they don't consciously know that somewhere in their lineage there were these patterns, they're still imprinted in the psychological field. And we continue to generate those until those patterns are identified and completed, and a new trajectory is made forward. I like people to do a journaling exercise, and it's just simple. It's I am someone who, and then you complete that with this free association of like I'm someone who can't have what I want, or takes a long time to get my needs met, or I'm not worthy of this, or whatever it might be. And there's both like light and shadow aspects of that, and some of them are true, and some of them are just really distorted perspectives based on old experiences or history. So that's another way that we can clean up our consciousness and say, what would be truer? If you were to choose that statement, I am someone who can heal these old wounds and have what I want, have what's meant for me.
That's interesting because I'm a Buddhist. I practice like Nichiren Daishonin Buddhism, and this idea of like affirmations when we're chanting and just kind of Buddhist philosophy. If you have affirmations that are positive, it's kind of law of attraction,
Hmm.
then that will tend to kind of self fulfill itself. Like you will be on that path of that positivity is going to continue to be like your frequency, or you'll radiate with a frequency, will bring you toward those affirmations. So
Very
if you
much.
believe you're going to be successful, it's like if you start today saying, "Well, this is going to be a bad day," then you're probably going to radiate in that frequency of that bad day and be in the bad day, and then find everything that confirms you're in the bad day.
Yep.
Versus if you think like, "I'm going to have a great day, I'm going to win, I'm just gonna kick." But
Yes. Let's
uh,
go.
then that mindset, some people feel like, well, why is that person feel like that? That person's like too much. Well, it's like if you're not your own ally,
Hmm.
you're not your own cheerleader. Like who else is gonna do it?
Yeah, this world is going to be a bad experience if you don't have your own back, that's for sure. And then you also attract other people who mirror to you that you don't have your back, and they won't have it either. But as we realize we're worthy of having our own back and we treat ourselves as such, we begin to filter out the people that don't meet us in that way, and we attract the people that will. And I practice what's called mature manifestation. You brought up the law of attraction, and I love that. And some people like want things from their ego, like, oh, I want a nice car, or I want whatever I want. And I like to ask, what is meant for me? What would God have for me? And when we can line up what's for us and what we want, that's the sweet spot. Because if we're wanting a bunch of stuff that's not for us, and they're just really these egoic desires that we're constantly grasping for more just for the sake of that, it's an immature position, and we're typically not fulfilled. Maybe a moment, but not in any kind of sustainable way.
Yeah, it's kind of when you go for the things that are more like I lived in Japan for a while, and
Mhm.
that's how I got into Nichiren Daishonin. But the idea of just like if you're totally into materialism and you're looking for, like, to me is like this idea is like, well, you want $1 million, like, but what is it that you really want? Because
Yes.
a lot of times if you hit that $1 million, then you're gonna want 2 million, then you want 5 million, then you want 10
Never
million.
enough.
But the core of why are you not happy? What is it that you want? Do you want security? Do you want to
Yes.
be able to have self determination? Do you
Mhm.
want to be able to take your view and make it happen? Have a vision and make it happen. So if you've got somebody like a Steve Jobs say, "I'm going to make that iPhone," everybody says, "Oh, a computer company shouldn't make a phone," and they were laughing at him, saying, "Oh, you can't do that."
Now
But
who's
he
laughing?
did do it. No,
Yeah.
he did do it. It's like, so the idea is like say it's like if you have a vision and if you can get the resources and the people behind it, that's what you want to do.
Yep.
Then that in itself will bring abundance because it's on a path that's going to get people to want to participate, to want to talk to you, to want to get
Yeah.
involved, want to connect. You'll find your tribe, then you get your opportunity.
Exactly, and it's a path of service. That's what I really hear you talking about. It's just not about self-centering. It's about both you being fulfilled, but from the service. And to me, abundance is a natural side effect of that. It's like we don't want to not want money. It's fine to have that as part of your experience. It's a part of our earthly reality. But when that's just focused on ourselves and not like how we can use that. And I find money loves a purpose. Like
Yeah.
money loves to know, like, why do you need more of me? And it's like, well, I have this vision, and can you help me? And well, yeah, now that you mention it, I better, you know, visit you more often and in larger quantities. Otherwise, what's the point? Just to have it doesn't really, yeah, doesn't really do it for money.
It's also like the idea of like flow state, in
Hmm.
terms of creativity, which I've
Yes.
kind of dealt with. Like as a writer, like I've talked to authors that will like world build,
Hmm.
plan things out, do a lot of project planning, kind of really creating all the detail.
Yep.
But when it comes down to it, like when they get into the heart of that project,
Mhm.
a lot of the kind of, flow state in the moment, kind of just coming to them, like the muse, actually created the heart of the project. Like they
Completely.
not that you don't have a structure, but you're willing to kind of take these downloads
Yeah, flow
from the
with the
universe
structure.
and not be like if it comes to you, you don't like wave it off.
Yes. You gotta be open to it's like something's trying to be given to you. Are you listening? And I really relate to that. I've written 2 books and they really I always say they wrote me. It was like I had this idea, this structure, and then I remember my first book, like there was a particular weekend and I didn't sleep for 3 or 4 days and I didn't need to. It was like I was being
Yeah, they just
sustained by something
yeah.
so much bigger than me, and it was just coming and coming and coming, and I turned my phone off. I barely ate anything, and then I was like, oh, it was like a birth canal, and then
Yeah,
out.
it happens like that. A lot of times there was a story about Hendrix, he was like doing a session with the Isley Brothers,
Okay.
and suddenly he put down something that was like, "That's not the song." And he said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "What? Yeah, the universe gave me this and I had to put it down."
Mm.
And he was known for just like getting these kind of downloads that would happen. This thing, something would just happen. He'd be like working as a sideman before he became you know, his own project, his own thing.
Yeah.
He was a side guy. He was playing with Little Richard, all these people.
Mhm.
And that would happen. He'd end up getting in trouble because people were like, "What are you doing? You're not doing the job. The job is to do my song." And he would this other song would come in. It's like, "That's not what we want." But eventually, because that kept on happening, we got put on a path that like he ended up having his own unique sound.
Yes.
And eventually somebody heard that, like the guy from the Animals from London
Mhm.
heard him and said, "Whoa, we need to tap into this." And then the right person heard him, and then boom, the opportunity. But his behavior did not change when those downloads happened. He kept on doing that.
Mm.
Now, immediately, he sometimes would lose a job,
Yeah.
but in the like further down the line, doing that actually got him his success.
Yes. That's to me is so admirable. It's like, what are we in service to? Are we answering to that higher calling, or are we answering to a lot of our systems are very broken and they're very controlled, and like life force energy and creative flow doesn't work like that. And when you know that, and how beautiful that he stuck with that, because how much incredible music he gave to us. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
think sometimes you have to know, like, if you're in an organization and like you go to the meetings and nobody ever listens to your ideas, and then it's like, okay, well, I'm a square peg in a round hole.
Hmm.
Sometimes you have to know where to move. Like
Yes.
and I've been in that situation where it's like, I used to work for these big Fortune 500 companies. Now I'm with a
Mhm.
smaller company that's
Yeah.
more agile,
Mhm.
that's willing to listen to ideas.
Mhm.
And I just found it's like, well, I found my tribe. And sometimes sometimes you don't listen or actually read the room.
Mhm.
Like like sometimes you have to read what's going on and say, well, you know what? Am I actually in the right place?
Yeah. Well, that takes me back to some of our earlier conversations. It's like when we're living out of fear, desperation for resources or for a clout or to move up the ladder in whatever setting has us ignoring those kinds of things. Like we have to be willing to walk away in order to like trust that that next thing is going to get us where we're meant to be. But that's tough when we're living in fear. So that's why it's really important to face those fear stories and do that work.
Yeah, because fear and scarcity, and I think people go for safety. So you might stay in a toxic workplace because
Mhm.
you know you're going to get that check,
Yep.
right? And that's something that's known. But your soul is not satisfied, right? Your heart is not satisfied.
Yep.
And so are you really living up to your full potential just because you're meeting your requirements for your mortgage and your food bill, but you're not really happy?
Yeah, I call that expensive money. That's not free to be. You might be getting a paycheck, but it's not free. It's really expensive at the soul level, and it will eventually cost us our health. And when I wasn't willing to walk away from my psychotherapy practice, I built a healing center in Central Florida and maintained it for over 10 years. And I got really sick. And I
Mhm.
couldn't understand why. Medical doctors couldn't find one thing going on, but I literally felt like I was going to die. I couldn't get up off the floor, heart palpitations, couldn't eat, no appetite. I'm like, what's going on? And one of my spiritual teachers said to me, you are dying. It's called an ego death. What aren't you
Mhm.
facing? And I said, "Oh." And I was hearing it, but I was ignoring it every step of the way. It was like, it's time to retire. It's time to retire. You're done with this. But I always saw myself as being old and gray in my therapist chair, serving my clients. I loved it. I was good at it. I was making great money. I couldn't see the problem. On paper, it all sounded good, but yet
Mhm.
there was another call on my life. And as soon as I retired and answered that, all my symptoms disappeared. My life got exponentially better. There was more wealth financially, health wise, relationship wise, service wise. It got better than I could have imagined. But that required me to do that terrifying thing. You
Yeah.
know,
It's kind of the thing
took
with
me 2 years to listen.
Bowie used to say, like, he didn't feel like an artist unless he was treading water a little bit,
Yeah.
and he would
Yeah.
change,
Mm,
and change where he didn't have to. Like,
yeah.
he'd go from, like, his famous Ziggy Stardust, right? A lot of rock stars would have just stayed in that because that was working,
Yeah.
and then he would go and change the personas, and sometimes they did not financially pan out. The
Mm,
different personas he would come up with would not always equal what he had done
yes.
before, but he was like, "I need to do it because I need to, grow
Mm,
as an artist," and that's always a hard thing because people will be around you. They were like, "Well, you're not bringing in the money you brought in last time.
mhm.
You're not hitting the fame numbers you got last time. You're not on the chart where you were last time." Say,
Yeah.
"But I need to actually do some building."
Mhm.
And this is where I think some people don't understand. It's like a wave, like,
Yes.
it goes up and down, and so sometimes it's not
Seasons.
always going straight up all the time. Sometimes there's a little dip because you might need to learn something,
Yes.
and you're not always gonna be, like, at the top of that thing you're trying to learn.
Yeah. Yeah, there's seasons for everything, and we don't we like that up trajectory, or we like the expansion, but we don't like the contraction. But if you think of it in terms of birth, the contraction is what builds the energy to allow for the expansion and that new life to come forth. So when we get to that point, I'm not there yet, when we can appreciate the expansion as much as the contraction, we're a lot happier, because we're not going to avoid those places. And it doesn't mean anything bad or wrong is happening. I think that's another distortion that we have. It's like, oh, it's bad when there's less money, or things slow down, or there's not as much flow. But it's just a part of life. We're not ever always doing one thing or moving in one way.
Yeah, it's like you were talking at the beginning, it's like some people need to fill the space
Yes.
with, like, noise, right, or activities, and don't take the time to actually kind of be quiet, like,
Yeah.
or be in the quiet, be in the silence.
Mhm.
And in music, we have this idea, like, sometimes it's like the silence between the notes,
Mm.
and we can get crazy adding all these layers. Where right, and then it's like, but the thing is, it's if you have more silence between the notes, then the notes sometimes can mean more.
Mm.
And so some people don't feel that they have to fill up that space.
Yes.
But are you filling up the space with anything that's actually saying anything? Or are
Right.
you
Is
just
that
filling it up
valuable? And
to do it?
yeah. Is
Like,
it noise,
every
or
the
is it
noise, is
music?
it discordance? Is it not, does it not even really fit?
Yeah.
As like, if you actually let time, to actually hear your partner or hear what somebody's saying,
Yes.
but people don't, we live in such a quick speed kind of
Mhm.
based world. Like, do you actually take the time to understand what is happening
Yeah.
and process it before you go and try to make a move?
Mhm. Yeah, sometimes we're so on autopilot, we don't even there is no pause. There's just the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And I mean, the word maturity is one of my favorites, because these are things you only learn through experience and trial and error, and also history. It's like you can look back and see that, oh, last time there was a pause, on the other side of that, something incredibly beautiful happened, or this other opportunity opened up, and we start trusting life a little bit more. But
Mhm.
until we've had some of those experiences, and we're willing to do that personal growth work and that review and like assessment, and slow down enough to see the patterns, we're going to miss those things over and over again.
It's just interesting because you were talking about, like, you had kind of a block, or you kind of hit the wall in something that you felt like, well, that's your practice. Yeah, I've talked to, like, people who were like doctors or
Mhm.
lawyers or engineers, and then they suddenly realize they trained their whole life, they've got their certificates, they got their degrees, and then they decide, oh, I don't want to do it anymore. So that's very like world shaking, because like if you've spent your whole life training to
Yes.
do X, and now you're in X, and now X is not what you thought it was, and
Yeah.
it's not actually solving maybe the problems you thought it was going to solve, and maybe there's something else going on, and you have to address that, and you're like, well, I thought this was going to satisfy everything.
Yeah, for me, that was hiding. Like, I am really meant to be more visible, and I was using my gifts, but on a very small scale compared to what was being asked of me, or what I'm here to do. So I was hiding in this office, and there's only so many hours in the day. So even if I was seeing, 20, 30, 40 clients a week, which I wasn't, typically 25, to 30 clients a week, it's like that's it. There's a glass ceiling. You're not going to
Yeah,
be able to, whether it be make more money than that or help more people than that, was really where it was at for
with
me.
limitations in
And
terms of what you can
yeah,
actually do. Yeah, because if you go into a wider like space, like if you're into a space like where I can actually reach way more people because I'm actually outside the office, I'm on the ether, I'm in the ether, right?
yes,
Or I'm on a stage somewhere giving a talk, or I'm doing a webinar, or I'm going to these like conferences, where I'm connecting with people on a global level. Because it's like I always go by sociology, like microcosm, macrocosm. Like
hmm,
if you're in this like microcosm kind of niche, well, you're kind of locked into that. But if you can go outside of that, you could go and affect things way beyond your neck of the woods.
very much. And I'm not exchanging time for money nearly as much anymore. I mean, now it's like I have a membership site with, it's infinitely scalable, and I have products that are digital and virtual that people can download and benefit from while I'm asleep. And I don't have a limitation on who I can reach with the medicine that I serve now. And I'm helping healers and spiritually aware entrepreneurs, and they're on the front lines helping other people. So I love that I paid attention to that, because and it was terrifying, and this really happened after I published my first book, and I started being interviewed about it and doing radio and TV spots and different things. And I would feel so nauseous before each one. And I just couldn't wait to get back to the cocoon of my office with me and my clients who loved me and knew me, and they weren't going to criticize or reject me.
Yeah,
But life's not about playing it safe, as you said so beautifully earlier. Life is about living the life we're meant to live, and that requires feeling that fear and doing it anyway.
yeah,
And baby
that's a hard.
steps in that direction. It is hard.
Yeah,
Easy.
that's the thing, because you talk to a lot of like, I go back to like artists. Is like a lot of artists agonize about the moments before they go on stage,
Yes.
and even though you see them in their stage self and they look supremely confident, you'd be surprised how many of them are really going through a lot before they hit that stage,
Yes.
because their stage self, and they still do it, but they have, and sometimes they over time they figure out ways to handle that
Yeah.
in healthier ways compared to like the stuff that had happened in the 60s and 70s.
Yes.
But like people didn't know how to deal with that,
Yeah.
and it would be a real thing, and then they found like they had crutches that
Yeah.
usually took them away from the they took them away from us because of the crutches, because they didn't fully like dive into what is actually going on here,
Yeah.
and that's always hard to deal with that, because people are like, they don't want to know about your hang up or how hard it is to get to it. They just want you to do the job.
Yes. It's like so transactional. It's just like, I don't, what does that have to do with this? Just check this off the list.
Yeah,
And yeah.
that's a hard thing to kind of work through that. But once you do that, it's an interesting thing, because like to get people into the podcast world, the first couple episodes they do, they're really anxious to get butterflies. They're you know freaking out sometimes. I've talked to
Yes.
people who created their own shows, and it's like it was hard for them to keep on going past like that certain point. There's a certain point where then it becomes comfortable.
Yes.
Some people don't actually make it beyond like 10 episodes. Their discomfort level hits a level, and then they drop. They just say,
Yep.
forget it, I can't do it.
Yep.
And then it's like you kind of have like a test. It's like the acid test. It's like, are you actually gonna stick through it and get to the other side of it, or are you gonna let that angst just take you out of it?
Exactly, and do you have the support? I mean, I think all of the hard times that I went through where I turned a corner and made the hard choice, it was a combination of, like, finding that courage within myself, but also asking for help, like people who've done it before me, people who can mentor me, guide me. What am I missing? Mirror me back to that thing that I can't see. It's like if you've got spinach in your teeth, someone's got to tell you, or you've got to see
Yeah,
it in the mirror.
and
Like, how are you going to know?
ask for help. Like some people are so scared of asking for help,
Yes,
or scared of
yes.
showing their vulnerability.
Yeah, but to get anywhere meaningful, like, we're not gonna do that by ourselves, and we've gotta have people around us, and sometimes, like, our family, while they might be well-meaning and they wanna cheer us on, they've got their own fears. I talk to a lot of people whose partner is, like, scared financially, and so they're like, "Well, I don't wanna let my wife down," or, "I don't wanna let my partner is scared of me taking this risk," and it's like, okay, well, then we work through those fears together, but we don't just let fear win and
Mhm.
say, well, forget it. I'm not going to take anything. But we also don't put everything on the line and, potentially somewhere there's a middle ground that we
Yeah,
can
there's a
find.
balance. There's a
Yeah.
balance to
Yeah.
going and being that starving artist or the one
Hmm.
that throws it all the way on the line. It's like, oh, maybe I have a day gig from
Exactly.
a
A
side gig.
bridge between.
Instead, it's like I have some balance that's like I'm not going all the way off the cliff
Yeah.
if something goes wrong. So sometimes there's all this. I think people get to this all or nothing. It's
Yes.
like black or white, and there's a lot of grays. There's a lot of colors in between,
Yeah.
and people always want to go for because we're an instant gratification society.
Hmm.
And if you can't do it on the first try, second try, then people just forget it. And it's usually what people got to understand is no overnight success story. All these big billionaires, most of them, unless they got all their money from their daddy or whatever,
Right.
they had multiple iterations of failures, before they got to where they got. And it's not all them. There's
No.
tons of people behind them. They may have their name on the company,
Right.
but if you actually look behind it, it's not just them. Um, and I think
Never.
we have this idea, this Horatio Alger myth that everybody says, "Oh, I just did it myself."
Hmm.
And
And
I
I
think
did it
that,
quickly,
yeah,
overnight,
it's
with no
not very helpful.
failures.
It's not very
Yeah.
helpful because it's going to make people think they can't do stuff.
Exactly, and it's a lie. When we talk about distorted consciousness, when we are living your life from a lie and you're believing things that simply aren't true, it's never going to create something that is exciting and like intriguing for you to be living. So identifying like what's actually true, what's the story here, and where's the BS, and how do we break through it and yeah, create from a place of inspiration and truth.
So, what's the concept of like energy of gratitude? Um,
Mm.
because I don't think everybody understands like gratitude at any level.
Uh, so true. Well, I'll be honest that, back in the day when it was all over
Your
Oprah,
mic
the
kinda cut out.
gratitude journal and stuff,
I don't know what
I think
happened.
it's important that we don't.
Your mic
uh
cut out.
oh, can you hear me now? Do you hear me? No? Hmm.
What happened? Your mic was going good. I don't know
Do
what
you
happened.
hear me now? Okay. I didn't touch anything. We hear me now.
Check in your audio and your settings. I don't know if you're using like Bluetooth or somehow your audio signal just cut out.
Okay, let me check.
Oh, that's weird. I've never had that.
Okay, I've got that here now. I mean, am I back? Hello, hello?
Hmm.
Hello?
Hmm.
This is so strange.
If you go into settings and check your
Let
audio
me
and see if it's
swap
pointing
once
to the right
again.
mic.
Okay, can you hear me now, Phantom? Anything
Hmm.
now?
I don't know what happened. I'm picking a
Huh.
little bit more. Maybe go for your computer mic
Okay.
instead of your headset mic.
All right.
If you can hear me, did I cut
I've
out?
unplugged and replugged in. I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Let me try something. I'm gonna pop out and pop back in.
Okay. Testing, testing.
Can you hear me?
I hear you. Yep. Can you hear me?
Oh boy, I don't know something happened to StreamYard. This is the problem with live. I haven't had this happen before, but we've got some kind of technical issue where the audio isn't coming through. Let me see. One, two, 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2. Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, for some reason the audio, I don't know if it kicked over to like a Bluetooth and then lost your setting or something. It
Oh,
just
so
lost.
strange. Okay. I
Well,
think we
sorry
got
about
too
that.
high vibe there for a minute. We got knocked out of the
If the
ethers.
vibe is like, oh, you're talking too much positivity, you got to take it down.
I know. I don't even remember what I was saying now. Do you remember your last question? It
I
was
think I
about
was talking about
gratitude.
gratitude and the
Yes.
concept of energy of gratitude, and then the ether went down.
Well, this usually when that happens, it's a very important message. So I'll just say I used to have an issue with gratitude, like journaling when it was all the rage, and it was like people bypassing their real other feelings and just putting gratitude on top, like spraying Febreze on a pile of crap. So that's not what I'm talking about when I'm talking about a gratitude practice. I'm talking, and I like the word gratefulness. Like,
Mhm.
can you find genuine gratefulness for what you already have? And when you do that, it keeps your channel of receiving open so that more of what is for you can appear. One of my sayings that I use a lot with my clients is thank you, more please. So it's like I'm grateful for what I have and I am open to receiving more of what is for me. Because a lot of times we do this thing where we take what we can get and then we settle right there
Mhm.
versus like allowing ourselves to continue desiring and longing for what else there is still out there, whether that be financially or else. Like, how good can it get? How good can
You know,
you
yeah,
stand it?
you gotta like aim for the sky. You're like
Yes.
you're always pushing, like you push all the time
Yeah.
to even though you might not hit it, like the next time you can. It's like some people just say, well, I'm not even gonna try that,
Yeah.
right? So they just like example, somebody try to learn guitar, gets in a band, plays in a bar, and then doesn't get picked up by a big label or something, and just
On the
throws it
first
away,
night.
right?
Yeah.
And then a person who keeps on playing until they're like in their 50s and actually gets a contract in their 50s.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the point of getting the contract. They just loved the experience of playing all those years. Where the
Yes.
other person, did they actually really like playing guitar?
Mm-hmm.
Or they had this expectation that they were going to be some big thing, right?
I wanted fame
Yeah.
versus,
You
yeah.
didn't actually want to have the experience of being a musician and doing that
Mhm.
for tens of years.
Yeah.
And you don't always end up being the biggest thing on the world in the world,
Mm-hmm.
but the experiences you have might be really very valuable to yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's where the monetary examples aren't always a good example. Like that time you spend with the people that over that period,
Mhm.
That's what the treasure is.
Yes.
And
Yes.
people would lose sight of it.
You got to do what it takes, and nowadays we're lazy. It's like, what happened to that 10,000 hours to get to
Yeah.
mastery, and are we even a master of anything at that point? It's like you're just getting started. I mean, you got
Yeah.
to over and over and over again.
Yeah. If you're in it, like you end up spending a lot of time getting to a point where eventually, like, we get these authors that suddenly, how many books they did, and then boom,
Yes.
the one hits, right? It wasn't that they were always trying to get they just kept on putting that work out into the world,
Mhm.
and eventually somebody picked up on it. It's like, oh, here's this unique voice, and then
Yes.
they get their opportunity. And also sometimes you can live at a certain level,
Mhm.
right? If you don't go overboard, you could actually be a working artist.
Yes.
You could act, but if you had this idea that you're gonna make, then you're never like the problem is your expectations versus like, can you be a sustainable? Can
Yes.
you make it sustainable? Can it be interesting? Can it be making you want to get up every day, right,
Exactly.
and do it? Like if the whole is if you don't want to get up and do it anymore, then maybe it's not really that valuable to you.
No, exactly. If you've got all these limitations and expectations on it versus that unconditional, I'm just showing up for this. And also it's like it's not, you're like stewarding the energy of this creation that's coming through you. You're not in charge of it. You're not controlling it. You're not manipulating it. And I think that's another thing that comes with the maturity of the creative process is answering to that versus like yeah, trying to make it be something that you want it to be.
There's also one thing that you mentioned that you actually work with like healers and other coaches helping them.
Yes.
And so it's kind of like people might, not realize is like anybody who's like doing that type of work with people needs their own kind of has to have, some support for what they're doing because it's like you're getting hit with so much, I think you can get overwhelmed by all the things that you're hearing or feeling or working with other people.
Oh,
So
for
you need some
sure.
kind of release, right? Or you need a way to be able to kind of shake it off.
Yeah, we call that compassion fatigue is when, you're like sitting with so many people holding their stuff, you have to be able to, clear and shield your system to be able to help them, but then also be able to have your own life and let that go at the end of the day. And many healers keep me on retainer and we clear that energy on a regular basis and we talk about, what are they meant to create and what is next for them and how can they stay in right relationship to bring that forward.
Well, that's awesome because I think some people might feel like, well, maybe they don't need that.
Mhm.
Like sometimes doctors and nurses they get burned out because they don't
Yeah.
realize they need to be able to
Yes.
shake it off and recover and have that recovery time.
Right.
But if you don't give yourself that recovery time or the downtime or the kind of you just need a mental health day. You
Yeah,
know,
you pay for that. It
you have
takes
to.
a toll at some point.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people probably realize that now. It's probably in the training that you
Yeah.
need to do that, but maybe in the past people didn't realize it was like a badge of honor to suffer.
Yes. Yes.
Do you still run into people if you have that kind of badge of honor to suffer mindset?
Some people, yeah, it's almost like a self-punishment, like I don't deserve to be happy or, it's not a lot of what I see is like, it's not okay for it to be easy, like hard work is really rewarded, and I find, yes, do what it takes to get done what you're here to do, but you don't have to torture yourself in the process. There is a way that when you're on the right path, you're carried by a certain energy. I don't know if you've noticed that, but to me there's like a quality of effortlessness even if it's an
Mhm.
uphill climb. There's a
Yeah,
there's a way that like there's a something gently, pushing and carrying us forward. That's been my experience anyway.
yeah. It seems like it's like you're on the right path. Then it's not always like as difficult as people might think it is. Yeah,
Yes.
like sometimes the things it does come, and you shouldn't get like, oh, this came too easy.
Mhm.
Because if it comes, it's like I take it.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're on the right path, doors will probably be opening and you'll probably be getting some yeses and just putting one foot in front of the other. But if the doors are closing and you're getting a lot of no's and it's really hard, you might need to listen. Is that still the path that you need to
Yeah.
be on? And sometimes it is, but sometimes you got to pivot and switch
Yeah,
course.
the pivot moment is like the diminishing returns. Like
Yes.
like you're sitting there trying to solve a problem, sitting in the queue for 4 hours isn't probably going to cut it.
Yeah.
If you actually walk away
Yeah.
and take a walk, you go get some tea, do some tai chi, do a walk in the woods, go do like
Yes.
talk to somebody on the phone, come away from it, maybe go back to it the next day.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that in itself gives you a fresh set, like
Yeah.
50,000-foot view versus being in the middle of it. You don't see anything, you know?
Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, there it is. And it seems so obvious now, but yesterday it was like, pulling our hair out trying to find it.
Yeah, that's super. Well, I think that's always a revelation that when you find that, and even though you know that, sometimes something will happen in life where like, oh, I know that, but I
Yes.
was still doing the diminishing return thing.
Yes.
But I want to thank you for being on the show. I'm sorry about that technical glitch we had.
That's
Um,
okay.
But I want to let people know we have your kerinola.com URL. And if people click on that, is that how they connect with you?
Absolutely. I just rebirthed my website and it's got everything in terms of me and my offerings. So if anyone feels resonance, would love to have them stop over and visit.
That's fully clickable. And in the podcast description, you'll see that we've just been live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. We will be on Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify Video Podcast, Amazon Podcast, many more channels by tomorrow. We'll have a landing page out in the world. People will see some stories on Instagram and TikTok, YouTube Shorts. And so I want to let you know that. And I want to thank you for being a guest on the Family Electric Ghost podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. A great conversation.
Thank you.